Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EU's Valiant, watching the stars shift and dance outside the main viewing window. After 300 years of dreaming about this moment, humanity had finally done it. They had built ships that could travel faster than light, and now they were sailing between the stars like ancient explorers crossing unknown oceans. "Captain, we're picking up something on the long-range sensors," said Lisa Parker, his chief science officer. She was a brilliant woman in her early 30s, with sharp eyes that never missed a detail. "It looks like artificial structures about 2 light years ahead." Jake felt his heart speed up. This could be it. It's the moment that would change everything. "For the human race, are you sure it's not natural?" "Positive, sir. Patterns are too organized. These are definitely built by someone." Lisa's fingers danced across her console, pulling up more data. "Captain, I think we're looking at our first alien civilization." The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Jake looked around at his crew. Tony Rodriguez, his combat specialist, was checking his weapon systems out of habit. Kate Sullivan, their engineer, was monitoring the ship's power levels. All of them knew this was the most important moment in human history. "Set course for those structures," Jake ordered. "But keep our weapons ready. We don't know what we're dealing with." 3 days later, the Valiant arrived at the edge of an alien star system. What they found took their breath away. Massive space stations floated in orbit around several planets. Ships bigger than anything humans had ever built moved between the stations like schools of metal fish. The technology was clearly far ahead of anything Earth had ever produced. "My God," whispered Kate. "Look at the size of those things. Some of those ships must be 10 miles long," Captain Lisa said, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "We're being scanned. Multiple sources. They know we're here." Before Jake could respond, the main screen flickered and changed. The image of an alien appeared, and Jake felt his stomach drop. The creature was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and completely black, and when it spoke, the voice was cold and mechanical. "Primitive vessel," the alien said in perfect English. "You will identify yourselves and state your purpose in Zephyrian space." Jake stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Valiant. We come in peace, seeking contact with other intelligent life." The alien's expression didn't change. "I'm High Commander Vexel of the Zephyrian Collective. Your species is unknown to us. You will submit to immediate inspection and registration." "We're happy to talk," Jake said carefully, "but we're not submitting to anyone. We're here as representatives of humanity, seeking peaceful contact." For the first time, the alien's expression changed. Its mouth curved into what might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Peaceful contact. How amusing. Your species has achieved basic faster-than-light travel and thinks itself ready to negotiate with its superiors." "Superiors?" Tony Rodriguez stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "We're not looking for masters. We're looking for equals." High Commander Vextel S4 arms moved in what seemed like a gesture of dismissal.
"Ow."
"Your species is young and ignorant. The Zephyrian Collective has ruled this sector of the galaxy for 10,000 of your years. We do not negotiate with primitives. You will return to your world and prepare for integration into the Collective." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "And if we refuse, then you will be integrated by force. Your choice is simple. Submit willingly or be conquered. Either way, humanity will serve the Collective." The transmission ended, and the alien's face disappeared from the screen. Jake looked around at his crew, could see the same mix of fear and anger in their faces that he felt in his own chest. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "I'm detecting movement from the alien ships. 3 large vessels are moving toward our position." Jake made his decision. "Kate, bring the engines to full power. Tony, prepare for combat. We're getting out of here." "Sir," Tony said, "we can't fight those ships. They're too big and too advanced." "We're not fighting," Jake replied. "We're running. We're taking word back to Earth about what we've found." The Valiant turned and began to accelerate away from the alien fleet. For a moment it seemed like they might escape without incident. The universe exploded around them. The alien weapons were unlike anything humans had ever seen. Beams of pure energy that could punch through the Valiant's shields like they were made of paper. The ship shook and bucked as the aliens fired warning shots around them. "Trying to disable us," Kate shouted over the noise. "Us dead? We'd be dead already." Jake gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. "How long until we can jump to faster than light?" 30 seconds, Kate replied. "But Captain, I'm detecting something else. There's another human ship out there. It's not military." Jake's blood turned to ice. "What kind of ship, colony vessel?" "This looks like the New Horizons class." "Captain, there are civilians on that ship. Families." Through the chaos of the battle, Jake saw the other ship on his screen. It was the UES Pioneer, one of the colony ships that had left Earth 6 months ago, carrying 50,000 people to start a new life on a distant world. Among them was his sister Amy and her 2 young children. "They're targeting the colony ship," Tony said, his voice filled with horror. Jake watched in disbelief as the alien ships turned their weapons on the defenseless Pioneer. The colony ship had no shields, no weapons, no way to defend itself. It was full of families, children, elderly people who had sold everything they owned for a chance at a new life among the stars. "We have to help them," Jake said, but even as he spoke, he knew it was too late. The alien weapons hit the Pioneer with devastating force. The colony ship broke apart like a toy, its hull splitting open and spilling its contents into the vacuum of space. 50,000 people died in seconds, their dreams of a new world ending in fire and darkness. Jake stood frozen, watching the debris field that had once been a ship full of hope and families. Among that wreckage were the bodies of his sister and her children. People who had trusted him to keep them safe in this new frontier. Captain Kate said urgently, "We can jump now. We have to go." High Commander Vexel's face appeared on the screen again. "This is what happens to those who refuse the collective's generous offer. Return to your world, Primitive. Tell your leaders what you have seen. They have 1 year to surrender, or all of your worlds will share the same fate." The transmission ended, and the alien ships began to move away, leaving the Valiant alone with the wreckage of the Pioneer. "Jump," Jake said quietly. "Get us home." As the stars streaked past the windows and the Valiant entered faster than light. "Travel." Jake stared at the empty space where the Pioneer had been. The aliens had made their message clear. Humanity could submit or be destroyed. But what the Zephyrian collective didn't understand was that they had just made a terrible mistake. They had shown humanity its true enemy, and they had given them a reason to fight. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threaten the human race with extinction. The journey back to Earth would take 2 weeks. Jake spent every moment of that time thinking about what he would tell the people back home. How do you explain that humanity's first contact with alien life had ended in massacre? How do you prepare an entire species for war? By the time the Valiant entered Earth's solar system, Jake had his answer. He would tell them the truth. The galaxy was not the peaceful place they had hoped to find. It was ruled by conquerors who saw humanity as nothing more than future slaves. But humanity had never been good at accepting slavery. It fought wars for freedom before, and they would fight again. The aliens wanted to see what humans were. Capable of when pushed to the edge, they were about to find out. The news hit Earth like a meteor strike. Within hours of the Valiant's return, every screen on the planet was showing the same terrible images. The wreckage of the Pioneer floating in space, the cold, arrogant face of High Commander Vexel delivering his ultimatum, the names of 50,000 dead civilians scrolling endlessly across news feeds. President Helen Carter stood in the emergency session of the Global Council, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. The room was silent, except for the quiet sound of someone crying. Everyone had lost someone on the Pioneer. Everyone knew that this was just the beginning. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Carter said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment humanity faces. "Extinction. We have 1 year to prepare for a war we never wanted, against an enemy we barely understand." In the back of the room, Dr. Marcus Webb raised his hand. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes, but his mind was one of the sharpest on Earth. Madam President, I've been studying the data from the Valiant. The alien technology is advanced, but it's not magic. They use energy weapons, force fields, and faster-than-light drives. All things that follow the laws of physics, we understand. Are you saying, Doctor? Asked the representative from Brazil. I'm saying we can fight them. We can learn from what we've seen. We can build better weapons, better ships, better defenses. But we need to start now, and we need to work together like never before. President Carter nodded. Dr. Webb is right. From this moment forward, every nation, every corporation, every research facility on Earth has one mission: prepare for war. We will not go quietly into slavery. The room erupted in voices as representatives began talking at once. Some wanted to try negotiation. Others demanded immediate military action. A few suggested hiding in the outer solar system and hoping the aliens would leave them alone. Admiral Roy Jackson stood up, his military uniform crisp and his face hard as stone. He was a man who had spent 40 years in the Earth Defense Force, preparing for threats that most people thought would never come. Now his worst nightmares were coming true. With respect, Admiral Jackson said, his voice cutting through the noise, we don't have time for debate. The aliens gave us 1 year. It's 365 days to build a military force capable of fighting an enemy that has ruled space for 10,000 years. It's impossible, said the representative from Japan. How can we match technology that advanced in just 1 year? Admiral Jackson smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because we're human. We've been fighting impossible wars for our entire history. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and disasters that should have wiped us out. We're still here because we never give up. Over the next few weeks, Earth transformed. Every factory that had been making cars started making weapons. Every shipyard that had been building cargo vessels started building warships. Every university that had been studying literature or art started studying alien technology and military strategy. The change was most visible in the recruitment centers. Young people lined up for blocks to join the military. Danny Chen was one of them. He was 19 years old, fresh out of college, and had never fired a weapon in his life. But his girlfriend had been on the Pioneer, and now she was dead. Want to kill every last one of those gray-skinned monsters? Danny told the recruitment officer. That's not why we're here, son, replied Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, a tough woman in her 30s who had been training soldiers for 10 years. We're here to protect humanity. The killing is just something we have to do to get there. Danny looked at her with confusion. What's the difference? The difference, Maria said, is that we're still human when this is over. We don't fight because we like it. We fight because we have to. Meanwhile, in laboratories around the world, scientists were working around the clock too. Understand the alien technology. Dr. Webb's team had recovered fragments of Zephyrian weapons from the battle site. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The aliens are more advanced than us, Dr. Webb explained to President Carter during a private briefing. But they're not gods. Their weapons use directed energy, much like our experimental laser systems. Their ships use some kind of gravity manipulation for propulsion. Their shields work by deflecting rather than absorbing impacts. Can we build similar weapons? The president asked. Not in 1 year, but we can build weapons that will hurt them. The key is not to match their technology, but to find ways to defeat it. Dr. Webb pulled up a holographic display showing the alien ship designs. Look at this. Their ships are huge, but they're not well armored. They rely on their shields and the assumption that their enemies can't hurt them. If we can penetrate those shields, we can do real damage. How do we penetrate them? Overwhelming force. Multiple simultaneous attacks. Or ... Dr. Webb paused. Looking uncomfortable? You could try something they won't expect. Something that goes against their ideas of civilized warfare. President Carter leaned forward. What do you mean? Attacks. Suicide runs. Biological weapons. Biological weapons. Nuclear weapons used as area denial tools rather than precision strikes. Everything that we've agreed is too horrible to use against other humans. The president was quiet for a long moment. These aliens aren't human. No, ma'am, they're not. While the politicians and scientists planned, the soldiers trained. Every day, thousands of new recruits learned how to use weapons they had never seen before. They practiced fighting in zero gravity in the vacuum of space. In the cramped corridors of spaceships, Danny Chen found himself in a training group with people from around the world. There was Marie Dubois from France, who had been a nurse before the war. There was Pavel Petrov from Russia, who had been a construction worker. There was Sarah Kim from Korea, who had been a teacher. "Why are you here?" Denny asked Sarah during a break in training. "My students," she said simply. "I had to. 100 children in my classes. They're all looking to adults to protect them. I can't do that from behind a desk." The training was brutal. Sergeant Gonzalez pushed them harder than any of them thought possible. They learned to fire weapons while spinning through space. They learned to fight with knives in close quarters. They learned to use explosives, to hack computer systems, to survive in hostile environments. "The aliens think war is a game with rules," Sergeant Gonzalez told them. "They have ceremonies and protocols and codes of honor. We're going to teach them that humans don't play games when our survival is at stake." 6 months after the Valiant returned to Earth, the first new human warships rolled out of the shipyards. They were not pretty, were not elegant. They looked like exactly what they were: weapons built by a species that had been pushed to the edge of extinction. The ships were covered in armor and bristling with weapons. They had no luxury quarters, no observation decks, no facilities for diplomacy. They were designed for one purpose: to kill alien ships and the creatures that flew them. Admiral Jackson stood in the command center of the New Earth Defense Force headquarters, watching the ships take their positions around the planet. Behind him, President Carter and Dr. Webb watched the same displays. "How many ships do we have?" President Carter asked. 237 combat vessels, Admiral Jackson replied, "not counting the fighters and support craft." "It'd be enough. It will have to be. We don't have any more time." Dr. Webb pointed to another display showing intelligence reports from deep space monitoring stations. "The aliens are moving. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in their territory. They're gathering for something big." "The invasion," President Carter said quietly. "Yes, ma'am. Best estimates say they'll be here in 6 months." President Carter turned to look at the displays showing human preparations. Weapon factories working day and night. Training centers turning out new soldiers every week. Research labs developing new technologies. Entire planet mobilizing for war. 6 months, she said. "We've come so far in 6 months." "The aliens made one mistake," Admiral Jackson said. "They gave us time to prepare. They think we're primitives who will panic and surrender. They don't understand that humans get more dangerous when they're cornered." In the training centers, Danny Chen and his fellow soldiers were learning their final lessons. They had been transformed from civilians into warriors, from individuals into members of a military unit that would fight as one. "Remember," Sergeant Gonzalez told them, "you're not just fighting for yourselves. You're fighting for every human who ever lived, and every human who ever will live. The aliens want to erase our species from history. We're going to show them why that's a bad idea." Danny looked around at his fellow soldiers. 6 months ago, they had been students and workers and teachers. Now they were humanity's last hope. It should have been terrifying, but somehow it felt right. This was what humans did when threatened. They came together, they fought back, and they never gave up. Above them, the new warships of the Earth Defense Force moved through space, their crews training for the battles to come. Below them, the factories continued their work, turning out weapons and ammunition for the war that was coming. The aliens had demanded submission or destruction. The alarm bells rang across Earth as the long-range sensors detected the approaching alien fleet. After 12 months of preparation, the moment had finally arrived. High Commander Vextel had kept his promise, and now hundreds of ships were moving toward Earth's solar system. Admiral Roy Jackson stood in the command center of the EDF headquarters, watching the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The alien fleet was massive, but it was exactly what his intelligence teams had predicted. The Zephyrians were approaching in their traditional formation, confident and arrogant, expecting to face a primitive species that would surrender at the first sign of superior force. Admiral called out Lieutenant Commander Steve Palmer, a young tactical officer who had become Jackson's right-hand man during the preparations. The alien fleet will reach the outer system in 6 hours. There. Moving in the standard Zephyrian battle formation we studied, Jackson nodded. Perfect. They're fighting the last war, not this one. Signal all fleet commanders. Operation Fury is a go. Across the solar system, human ships began to move. The plan was simple in concept, but deadly in execution. The aliens expected to find human forces clustered around Earth, trying to protect their homeworld. Instead, they would find something much worse. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new ship, the UES Retribution. It was one of the new heavy cruisers built specifically for this war. Unlike the exploration vessel he had commanded before, this ship was pure weapon. Every inch of it was designed to kill alien ships and the creatures that flew them. "Captain," said his new science officer, Dr. Linda Hayes, "we're getting the signal from Admiral Jackson.
Oh.
All units are moving to attack positions." Out at the stars, thinking about his sister Amy and her children who had died on the Pioneer, today was the day they would be avenged. Signaled the fleet. "We show these aliens what happens when you threaten humanity." First battle took place near Jupiter. The Zephyrian advanced scouts, 3 large cruisers, encountered what they thought was a small human patrol. Captain Lucy Hayes, commanding the light cruiser, used defiance. Led her small squadron in what appeared to be a desperate retreat. The alien ships pursued, confident in their superiority. Their commander, Subleader Kethfer, opened communications. "With the human ships, primitive vessels, you will surrender immediately. Your resistance is meaningless." Lucy Hayes looked at her crew, all of them veterans of the intensive training program. "You hear that, people? Our resistance is meaningless. I guess we should just give up now." The bridge crew laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. These were people who had spent a year preparing for this moment. They had trained until their fingers bled and their bodies ached. They had studied alien tactics until they could predict every move. They were ready. "Sir," said the weapons officer, "we're in position." "Fire everything," Lucy ordered. The human ships suddenly reversed course and opened fire with every weapon they had. But these were not the energy weapons the aliens expected. These were kinetic rounds, explosive missiles, something the aliens had never seen before. Nuclear torpedoes designed to detonate inside enemy ships. The alien shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, were useless against the solid projectiles. The first Zephyrian ship took dozens of hits before its commander understood what was happening. The explosions tore through its hull, and the ship began to break apart. "Impossible," Subleader Kethfer said as his own ship shook under the impact. "Of human weapons? No civilized species fights like this?" "We're not civilized," Lucy Hayes replied over the open channel. "We're human." The second part of the trap activated as more human ships appeared from behind Jupiter's moons. The aliens found themselves surrounded by enemies who fought with a brutality they had never experienced. When their shields failed, human boarding, parties cut through their hulls with plasma torches and fought. Hand to hand in the corridors of alien ships, Danny Chen was part of one of those boarding parties. He had trained for this moment for months, learning to fight in the zero-gravity environment of space. Now he found himself inside an alien ship, face to face with creatures that had murdered his girlfriend and 50,000 other innocent people. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with forearms and gray skin. They moved gracefully in the low gravity, and their weapons were elegant energy rifles that could cut through human armor. But they had never faced an enemy that fought with such desperate fury. "They're not following the rules of war," one of the aliens said in their strange language, not knowing that human computers had broken their communication codes months ago. "Good," Danny replied in the same language, surprising the alien. "We don't like rules." The close-quarters fighting was savage. The aliens were skilled warriors, but they fought with discipline and honor. The humans fought like animals protecting their young. When their rifles ran out of ammunition, they used knives. When their knives broke, They used their bare hands. Sergeant Maria Gonzalez led her squad through the alien ship's corridors, leaving destruction in their wake. The aliens had expected to face cowardly primitives. Instead, they found themselves fighting soldiers who would rather die than surrender. "Control room is ahead," she told her squad. "Remember, we want prisoners. Intel needs to know how their command structure works." They burst into the control room to find Subleader Kethfer and his senior officers. The alien commander looked at the human soldiers with a mixture of fear and confusion. "You fight without honor. You use forbidden weapons. You are savages." "We're survivors," Maria replied. "And you're our prisoners." The news of the first human victory spread through both fleets like wildfire. The aliens had lost 3 ships and hundreds of crew members. The humans had lost no ships, though many soldiers had been wounded in the boarding actions. "Hi," Commander Vextel received the reports with growing alarm. "How is this possible? These are primitives. They should have been crushed instantly." His tactical advisor, a scarred veteran named Kelthane, studied the battle reports. "Commander, they are not fighting like any enemy we have faced before. They use kinetic weapons that penetrate our shields. They fight at close range where our energy weapons are less effective. They seem to have no concept of honorable warfare. Then we will crush them with overwhelming force," Vextel declared. "Send the entire fleet against their homeworld. End this quickly." But the humans were not finished with their surprises. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the solar system, they encountered more human ships. Each battle was different, each one a lesson in human creativity and ruthlessness. Near Mars, the aliens faced human ships that used the planet's gravity to slingshot themselves at incredible speeds, ramming into alien vessels with devastating effect. The Zephyrians had never seen suicide attacks on this scale in the asteroid belt. Human fighters hid among the rocks, emerging to attack alien ships with swarms of small missiles. The aliens tried to use their superior sensors to locate the hidden humans, but the asteroid field provided too much cover. "They're everywhere," reported one alien captain to High Commander Vextal. "They do not fight in formations, do not follow battle doctrine. They attack from all directions at once." Webb watched the battles from Earth's command center, analyzing every piece of data. The aliens were learning, adapting their tactics to counter human strategies. But they were learning slowly, held back by thousands of years of traditional warfare. "They're getting smarter," he told Admiral Jackson. "But they're still thinking like Zephyrians. They expect us to fight like them." "Good," Jackson replied, "because we're about to show them something they've never seen before." The final surprise came as the alien fleet approached Earth. They expected to find the human homeworld defended by a desperate last stand. Instead, they found something that made no sense to their military minds. Earth was undefended. The planet that should have been humanity's final fortress was protected by nothing more than a few orbital stations and some patrol ships. It was as if the humans had abandoned their homeworld. "It's a trap," Kelthane warned his commander. "They would never leave their homeworld unprotected." "Then where are their ships?" Vextel demanded. The answer came from behind them. The entire human fleet, led by Admiral Jackson aboard the massive dreadnought U.S. Retribution, emerged from behind Earth's moon. They had been waiting, hidden in the moon's shadow, for the alien fleet to commit to their attack. "Now," Jackson ordered, "show them what human fury looks like." The battle for Earth began with a coordinated attack by over 300 human ships. They came from all directions, using tactics that the aliens had never encountered. Some ships used ramming attacks. Others launched boarding parties. Still others used new weapons that Dr. Webb's team had developed specifically to counter alien technology. The aliens fought back with their superior numbers and advanced weapons. But they were confused and disorganized. Nothing in their military training had prepared them for an enemy that fought with such desperate creativity. Captain Jake Morrison led his squadron against the alien command ship. It's the massive vessel that carried High Commander Vextel himself. The Retribution and its escorts punched through the alien defensive line, taking heavy damage but refusing to retreat. 2 years had passed since the first battle for Earth, and the war had spread across the galaxy. The Zephyrion Collective was no longer the confident empire that had once demanded humanity's surrender. Their fleets were scattered. Their member species were questioning their leadership. Their territory was shrinking as human forces pushed deeper into alien space. Admiral Roy Jackson stood in the command center of the massive space station that humans had built in the asteroid belt. The station was a fortress and factory combined, churning out new warships faster than the aliens could destroy them. Earth's entire industrial capacity had been converted to war production, and now humanity was building ships by the hundreds, reported Lieutenant Commander Steve Palmer. The latest intelligence reports are in. The Zephyrion Collective is fracturing. At least 6 member species have withdrawn their fleets from active combat. Jackson studied the tactical displays showing the current state of the war. Human forces now controlled territory that had been under alien rule for thousands of years. The momentum had shifted completely. What about the Quarians? Any word from our contacts? Yes, sir? They're ready to make their move? The Quarian Council is meeting tomorrow to vote on withdrawing from the collective entirely. The Quarians were one of the most surprising developments of the war. They were a peaceful species that had been forced to join the Zephyrion Collective centuries ago. Unlike the warrior races that made up the core of the alien empire, the Quarians had never wanted to fight. They had only joined the war because they had no choice. Dr. Marcus Webb had been the first to suggest reaching out to them. Not all of these species are our enemies, he had told the War Council. Some of them are just as much victims of the Zephyrians as we are. The contact had been made through a captured Quarian scientist named Zareth, who had been working on a Zephyrian research ship when it was destroyed by human forces. Instead of treating him as a prisoner, the humans had offered him protection and a chance to help his people. The Quarians have been slaves for 300 years, Zareth had explained during his first meeting with human officials. We never wanted to fight your species. We were forced to provide ships and soldiers for the collective's wars. 2 years later, the Quarians were secretly feeding intelligence to human forces. They provided detailed information about Zephyrion, ship designs, fleet movements, and strategic plans. The information was invaluable, but it also came with a price. Any Quarian caught helping humanity would be executed along with their entire family. Colonel Frank Rodriguez was in charge of protecting the Quarian contacts. He was a tough Marine who had fought in some of the bloodiest battles of the war, but he had developed a deep respect for the aliens who risked everything to help humanity. These people are braver than half the humans I know, he told his squad. They're risking their lives and the lives of their families to help us. We owe them our protection. The intelligence provided by the Quarians had led to humanity's greatest victory yet. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Commodore, was leading a special task force called Strike Force Alpha. Their mission was to hit high-value targets deep in enemy territory. Target confirmed, reported Dr. Linda Hayes from the bridge of the UES Retribution. Long-range sensors are detecting the Zephyrion fleet exactly where our Quarian contacts said it would be. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the enemy formation. It was a massive fleet, almost 200 ships, gathered around a strategic supply base. The base was crucial to Zephyrion operations in this sector. If it could be destroyed, it would cripple their ability to wage war in this part of the galaxy. Signal all ships, Jake ordered. We go in fast and hard. Hit the supply base first, then engage the fleet. Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. The human attack came without warning. Strike Force Alpha emerged from faster-than-light travel, already firing, their weapons targeting the supply base's critical systems. The base, protected by only a light defensive screen, was destroyed within minutes. The Zephyrion fleet responded quickly, but they were caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the human attack. The aliens were still trying to organize their formations when the human ships were already among them. Fighting at close range where their superior maneuverability gave them an advantage. Captain Lucy Hayes, while commanding a squadron of heavy cruisers, led her ships in a devastating attack on the alien command vessels. Her tactics were brutal and effective, targeting the ships that coordinated the alien fleet's movements. Control ship disabled, reported her weapons officer. The enemy formation is breaking up, Good Lucy replied. Now we finish them. Battle was over in less than 2 hours. The human fleet had destroyed the supply base and crippled the Zephyrian fleet, losing only a handful of ships in the process. But the real victory was not the military success. It was the effect the battle had on the other species in the collective. News of the defeat spread quickly through alien space. The Zephyrians, who had claimed to be invincible, were being beaten by a species they had dismissed as primitives. The myth of Zephyrian superiority was crumbling. Admiral Steve Palmer reported to Jackson, "We're receiving communications from multiple species. The Corians have officially withdrawn from the collective. The Thyaxians are requesting a meeting with our diplomatic team. Even some of the Zephyrian client species are making contact." Jackson nodded grimly. The war was entering a new phase. What had started as a simple conflict between humanity and the Zephyrian collective was becoming a galactic civil war. What about the Zephyrians themselves? How are they responding? Intelligence suggests they're pulling back to their core systems. High Commander Vextal has been replaced by someone called Supreme War Leader Drakethul. The new leadership is more aggressive, more desperate. Dr. Webb joined the discussion from his research station. The Zephyrians are facing something they've never experienced before: the possibility of defeat. They've ruled through fear and intimidation for so long that they don't know how to fight a real war. "What do you mean?" Jackson asked. "Never faced an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their determination. For 10,000 years, they've been the galaxy's bullies. They're discovering what happens when the bullies meet someone who fights back." The truth of Webb's words became clear in the next major battle. The Zephyrians, desperate to regain their advantage, launched a massive assault on the human colony of New Terra. The attack was led by Supreme War Leader Drakethul himself, commanding a fleet of over 500 ships. The humans defending New Terra were outnumbered 5-1. But they had something the aliens didn't understand: the willingness to sacrifice everything for their freedom. The colonists, led by Governor Patricia Stone, refused to evacuate despite the overwhelming odds. "This is our home," Governor Stone announced to the defenders. "We built this world with our own hands. We will not let alien invaders take it from us." The battle for New Terra lasted for 3 days. The human defenders used every trick they had learned during the war. They turned the planet's orbital platforms into massive weapons. They used the planet's gravity well to their advantage. They even crashed damaged ships into alien vessels in suicide attacks. Danny Chen was part of the ground defense force. Had been promoted to sergeant after his actions in the early battles. And now he was leading a squad of soldiers defending one of the planet's major cities. "They're landing troops," reported one of his soldiers. "Looks like they're trying to take the city intact, and we'll give them a city," Danny replied. "But they'll have to fight for every street." The ground battle was as brutal as the space combat. The Zephyrians had superior weapons and armor, but the humans knew the terrain and fought with desperate courage. Every building became a fortress. Every street became a battlefield. The tide of battle turned when Commodore Morrison's Strike Force Alpha arrived as reinforcements. The human fleet, now grown to over 100 ships, hit the Zephyrian fleet from behind while they were focused. "On the planet, this is for New Terra," Jake announced as his ships opened fire. "And this is for every human world you've threatened." The combined space and ground assault broke the Zephyrian attack. Supreme War Leader Drakethul, watching his fleet being torn apart by human forces, made a decision that would change the course of the war. "All ships, retreat to the core systems," he ordered. "We will make our stand there." But the retreat became a rout as more human forces arrived. The Zephyrian fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, fled in disorder. Ships were abandoned. Crews surrendered rather than fight to the death. The most shocking moment came when a group of Zephyrian officers, led by a ship commander named Velthor, contacted the human fleet directly. "We wish to surrender," Veltir announced. "It's not just our ships, but our entire species. We cannot fight this war anymore." Admiral Jackson received the message with mixed emotions. "Dr. Webb, what do you make of this?" "It's unprecedented," Webb replied. "The Zephyrians have never surrendered to anyone. Their entire culture is based on the idea that they are the master race of the galaxy. This surrender represents the complete collapse of their worldview." The final battle of the war took place in the Zephyrian home system, around the planet that had been the center of their empire for 10,000 years. The remaining alien fleet, almost 800 ships commanded by Supreme War Leader Drakethul, waited in defensive positions around their homeworld. They knew this was their last chance to save their civilization. Admiral Roy Jackson stood on the bridge of the EDF flagship Terra's Vengeance, looking out at the largest human fleet ever assembled. Over 1,000 ships from Earth and the colonies had come together for this final push. Behind them flew ships from the Corians, the Thyaxians, and 6 other species that had joined the human alliance. Admiral reported Lieutenant Commander Steve Palmer. All fleet commanders are reporting ready. The alien defensive positions are exactly as our intelligence predicted. Jackson nodded. The Corian contacts had provided detailed information about the Zephyrian defenses. The aliens had turned their home system into a fortress, with massive orbital weapons, platforms, and defensive stations protecting every approach to the planet. "Signal all ships," Jackson ordered. "This is the end of the war. Today we finish what they started when they murdered 50,000 innocent people." Commodore Jake Morrison was leading the first wave of the attack. His Strike Force Alpha had grown into a full battle fleet with some of the most experienced captains in the human Navy. As they approached the alien defenses, Jake thought about the long journey that had brought them to this moment. "All ships, remember the Pioneer," he said over the fleet communication system. "Remember why we're here." The battle began with a coordinated assault on the alien orbital defenses. Human ships, supported by their alien allies, attacked the defensive platforms with devastating effect. The weapons platforms, designed to fight traditional fleet battles, could not handle the chaos of the human assault. Captain Lucy Hayes led her squadron in a daring attack on the Central Command station. Her ships dove through the alien defensive fire, taking heavy damage but refusing to retreat. The station's shields collapsed under the sustained assault, and boarding parties led by Sergeant Danny Chen stormed the facility. "Control room secured," Danny reported as his squad fought through the alien defenders. "We have prisoners and intelligence data." The information recovered from the command station revealed the location of Supreme War Leader Drakethul's flagship. The massive vessel was hiding behind the planet's largest moon, protected by the elite guard of the Zephyrian fleet. "That's our target," Jake told his fleet commanders. "If we can capture or destroy their supreme commander, the war is over." The assault on Drakethul's position was the most intense fighting of the entire war. Alien elite guard fought with desperate courage, knowing that the fate of their entire species hung in the balance. But they were facing human forces that had been hardened by years of combat. Dr. Marcus Webb watched the battle from the fleet command ship, analyzing the alien tactics and weapons. "They're fighting differently," he told Admiral Jackson. "More desperately, but also more creatively. They're finally starting to understand how we fight." "Too little, too late," Jackson replied. "They had their chance to end this peacefully. They chose war instead." The breakthrough came when Colonel Frank Rodriguez led a massive boarding operation against Drakethul's flagship. Over 2,000 human Marines, supported by Corian technical specialists, cut through the alien ship's defenses and fought their way to the command center. The battle inside the alien flagship was savage. The Zephyrians, fighting for their lives and their civilization, used every weapon and tactic they possessed. But the humans had learned from 3 years of constant warfare, and they fought with a skill and determination that the aliens could not match. "We have him," Rodriguez reported as his Marines surrounded Supreme War Leader Drakethul in the ship's command center. "The alien commander is our prisoner." The capture of their supreme leader broke the remaining Zephyrian resistance. Ships began surrendering across the system. Some tried to flee, but they were pursued and captured by human forces. Within hours, the war was over. Admiral Jackson stood in the temporary command center that had been set up on the captured Zephyrian homeworld. Around him, his staff was processing the surrender of the remaining alien forces. The planet's surface was filled with refugee camps as displaced civilians waited to learn their fate. Admiral Steve Palmer reported, "We're receiving surrender offers from Zephyrian forces in 17 different systems. The entire collective is falling apart. Jackson looked at the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The war was over, but the peace would be even more challenging. Humanity now controlled the largest empire in galactic history. They had to decide what to do with it. President Helen Carter arrived from Earth 2 weeks later, aboard a diplomatic vessel escorted by a full battle fleet. She came to the former Zephyrian capital to meet with the surviving alien leaders and establish the new order that would govern the galaxy. Madam President Admiral Jackson said as he welcomed her to the planet, "The military situation is stable. All major Zephyrian forces have surrendered. But we have a bigger problem now." "What kind of problem?" "What do we do with them? We control the territory of dozens of different species. Some of them want to be independent, so others want to join the Human Alliance. A few are still loyal to the old Zephyrian system." President Carter looked out at the alien city that surrounded the landing pad. The buildings were tall and graceful, built by a species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Now, they were under human control, and their former masters were prisoners. "Set up a meeting with the alien representatives," she said. "It's time to build a new galaxy." The peace negotiations took place in the former Zephyrian Capitol building. Representatives from dozens of species sat around a massive table. Trying to create a new government that would prevent future wars, Dr. Webb served as the chief human negotiator. He had spent the war years studying alien cultures and languages, and he understood better than anyone how different species could work together. "We didn't fight this war to become conquerors," he told the assembled delegates. "We fought it to survive. Now we need to build something that will ensure this kind of war never happens again." The negotiations were difficult, as some species wanted revenge against the Zephyrians. Others wanted complete independence. A few still believed that the old system had been better. The breakthrough came when Zareth, the Korean scientist who had helped humanity throughout the war, made a proposal. That surprised everyone. "Create a federation," he suggested. "Let each species govern itself, but unite them under a common defense and common law. Let humanity lead because they prove they can protect the innocent and defeat the guilty." The proposal was debated for weeks. Some species objected to human leadership. Others worried about losing their independence. But gradually, a consensus emerged. The Terran Federation was officially established 6 months after the end of the war. It was a loose alliance of species, with Earth as the capital and humanity as the dominant partner. Each member species kept its own government and culture, but they were all protected by the human military and bound by common laws. Commodore Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of the Federation Defense Force. His first official act was to establish a memorial for the 50,000 civilians who had died on the Pioneer. "They died so that we could be free," he said at the dedication ceremony. "We will never forget their sacrifice, and we will never let it happen again." The memorial was built on a small moon in the system where the Pioneer had been destroyed. It was a simple structure, with the names of all the victims carved into black stone. But it served as a reminder to the galaxy of the price of aggression. 5 years after the end of the war, Admiral Jackson stood in his office on Earth, reading reports from across the galaxy. The Federation was growing stronger every year. New species were joining voluntarily. Trade was flourishing. The threat of war was fading. "Admiral," his aide reported, "we're receiving a delegation from the Outer Rim. 3 more species want to join the Federation." Jackson smiled. The galaxy that had once been ruled by fear was now held together by hope. Humanity had proven that they could fight when necessary, but they had also proven that they could build something better. Danny Chen, now a colonel in the Federation Marines, was training a new generation of soldiers. But these soldiers were different. They came from dozens of different species, all learning to work together under human leadership. Remember, he told his mixed class of human and alien recruits, "We're not here to conquer, we're here to protect. The galaxy is big enough for all of us, as long as we respect each other." And the lesson that the galaxy had learned was simple but profound. Humanity could be peaceful and generous, but they could also be terrible when threatened. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitives now knew better. The galaxy wasn't ready for humanity's fury. but it was learning to appreciate humanity's mercy. And that, perhaps, was the most important lesson of all.